If you're doing 7 to 8 exercises on your leg day, let me tell you, bro, you're totally wasting your time. You don't need more than 4 exercises that I'm about to share with you right now, so keep watching till the end. First of all, let me explain myself as to why I think only 4 exercises are more than enough to structure your leg day. It's because your legs have only 4 major muscle groups. That's the quadriceps, the glutes, the hamstrings, and the calves. So assuming you do one exercise with high intensity for each of these muscles, you don't need more than 4 exercises, bro. And secondly, it's always better to keep your leg days short because they're already way too mentally and physically fatiguing. So if you're doing like 7 to 8 exercises, by the time you reach the 7th or 8th exercise, you're hardly putting in any effort and you're just getting through the movements. And third reason, it's also because it keeps you consistent, because the shorter your leg workout is, the more motivated you are to complete it. So that's a big win-win. So you don't have any reason to skip your leg days anymore. So the first exercise you should be starting your leg day with should be a stable squatting variation. I personally prefer doing Smith machine squats. Why do I prefer Smith machine squats? Simply because it feels comfortable on my joints and this movement is super stable that helps me push closer to failure. This exercise targets your quads very well because, as you can see, as I go down, this folds my leg as much as possible, which stretches my quads to their full length. You know you're getting a full range of motion when your calves are touching your hamstrings in the bottom position, because that is the state in which you have the maximum knee flexion. I usually place my feet slightly in front because that helps me get a better range of motion and it feels comfortable on my ankles. But honestly, you can experiment with your own anatomy, because some people feel it's comfortable when they put their feet a little further, whereas some shorter people like me, they feel it's more comfortable when they put their feet a little backward. And don't worry about how much your glutes will be activated when you keep your feet further or backward, because they're going to be activated to the same degree no matter what. If you see the range of motion your glutes go through when you place your feet forward as compared to when you place your feet backward, it's literally the same. As long as your calves are touching your hamstrings when you go down, you are getting complete knee flexion, and that's what matters for your quadriceps, because you're not really doing this exercise for your glutes, but you're doing this exercise for your quadriceps. Your glutes is an accessory muscle that's being targeted to a very efficient degree while doing this exercise. So this exercise is basically a two-in-one exercise that targets your glutes as well as quads, but your focus should be on quads in this movement. What I basically mean to say is that your first exercise should be a stable squatting pattern. For you, this can be a hack squat machine if your gym has one, but because my gym doesn't have a hack squat, I prefer doing Smith machine squats because it's a very good replacement. Now the second exercise is for the muscle that everybody skips, and that's the calves. And I usually prefer doing seated calf presses. Now why do I prefer doing calves and not hamstrings after my squatting movement? Well, bro, I'm already super tired after squatting. I need a rest, like I need a break. I need a muscle that's easier to target. Now the second question, why do I do seated calf presses and not seated calf raises? Well, that's because if you see the anatomy of your calves, they're basically two main muscle groups. One of them crosses the knee joint and the other one doesn't. So the one that doesn't, it's not influenced by how bent your knee is, but the other one that actually crosses your knee joint, that does get influenced heavily depending on how much your knee is bent. So the straighter your knee is, the more stretched your calf muscle is, and the more stretch you get, the better hypertrophy you get. That is why I prefer doing seated calf presses, because your knee is straight in this variation. Then the third question you might ask is, then why not do standing calf raises and why seated calf presses? And the answer to that question is axial fatigue. Axial fatigue is basically the fatigue that your body experiences when you put a lot of pressure on your shoulders. And because I'm going to train my calves after my main squatting variation, in which I've already experienced a lot of axial fatigue, the last thing I want is to experience more axial fatigue while training my calves. I mean, honestly, it's not that big of a deal. If you like doing standing calf raises more, you can just do that, but I prefer doing it seated. Now, how to do this exercise? I usually like to focus more on the stretch and not as much on the contracted part, because as we know from numerous amounts of studies now, that the stretch is more beneficial for hypertrophy. So I basically just like to rotate on the balls of my feet, but you can honestly go through a full range of motion if that's what you like doing. The third exercise for the day is going to be the one for hamstrings, and it's either going to be lying leg curls or RDLs. You do not need to do both of these exercises in one day. As we all know, one of the heads of the hamstrings crosses the hip joint, whereas the other doesn't, similar to calves. So your leg positioning heavily influences how much your hamstring heads are targeted. So the lying leg curl variation is usually to target your hamstrings in its contracted state, and the RDLs, because it is a hip hinge movement, that means your leg positioning changes. That is usually to target your hamstrings in their lengthened state. Now, to be honest, if your gym has a good seated leg curl machine, then do that instead of lying leg curls, because in seated leg curls, your hamstrings experience a greater stretch as compared to lying leg curls. So it's basically better hypertrophy. But because the seated leg curl machine in my gym is pretty shit, so I just hate doing it, and that is why I do lying leg curls instead. But if your gym has a seated leg curl that is good, then do that. Now, because I follow a classic push pull leg split, I do the lying leg curls on my first leg day of the week and RDLs on the second leg day of the week. This way, I get to target both the heads of my hamstrings in one single week. Now, how do I perform both of these exercises for maximum results? While doing the lying leg curls, I focus on pushing my hips into the seat as hard as possible. And while doing RDLs, I just focus on keeping my entire spine straight and only hinging from my hip to get the maximum tension on my glutes and hamstrings. I only get my barbell below my knee level because that's honestly enough stretch your hamstrings need. Just make sure while doing your RDLs, your knees don't bend too much, only enough to help you balance during the movement. That's it. And now it's time for the fourth exercise for your leg day. That's going to be an isolation exercise for your quads. And I personally prefer doing Smith machine CC squats. If you're a beginner, you don't have to worry about this complicated movement. You can just focus on doing leg extensions. But for my intermediate or advanced viewers, once you stop seeing progress in your quads after leg extensions, it's probably because you're not able to stretch your quads enough during their isolation movement. And that is where CC squats is going to be of tremendous help. You see that classic V-shaped muscle on your quadriceps that's also called the rectus femoris? It basically also acts as a hip flexor. That means one of its functions is to get your leg forward. This in return means the more forward your leg is as compared to your torso, the lesser it stretches. And the more behind your leg is, that means the more parallel your legs are to your torso, the more stretched it is. And as you should already know by now, more the stretch, more the hypertrophy. So let's compare leg extensions with CC squats. As you can see, in leg extensions, your legs are in front of your body, which means your rectus femoris is not stretching as much as it can. But in CC squats, this is not the case. Because in CC squats, your legs are not basically in front of your body but parallel to your torso. That means your rectus femoris is stretching much more as compared to in leg extensions. And this is the key factor. Also, the resistance curve of the Smith machine CC squats is better than that of leg extensions. Well, that's because in leg extensions, you're getting constant tension throughout the movement. That means you're facing similar amount of tension in your contracted state as much as you are in your stretched state. This is all right, but usually the more tension you have in your stretched state, the better, and the lesser tension you have in the contracted state, the better. Because the energy that you're saving when you have lesser tension in the contracted state can be used to do more reps in the stretched state, which is more hypertrophic anyway. And if you look at the resistance curve in Smith machine CC squats, the tension is maximum in the bottom stretched part, and as you go up, it becomes lesser and lesser. That means it becomes lesser in your contracted state. And this is exactly what we want. Plus, in this movement, you really don't need to use a lot of weight, which is why your axial fatigue is also going to be much lesser. Just focus on touching your knees to the ground on every rep and always keeping your legs parallel to your torso. So all in all, the basic essence of this video was to tell you that you don't need to do more than 4 exercises to target your legs efficiently. All you need is one stable squatting movement, one straight leg calf pressing variation, one leg curling movement, and one hip hinge movement alternating between weeks, and one quad isolation movement that stretches your rectus femoris to its complete length. That's it. If you want to learn how to lose fat efficiently and stay lean forever for less than what you spend at McDonald's in a day, then the link for this guide will be in the description box below. Invest in your health instead. And that will be it for this video. I hope you found this video helpful. Like, share, subscribe, whatever for the YouTube algorithm. And I will see you in the next one.